What's going on, fellow art warriors, and welcome back to another little tutorial video. Today I am going to be talking about my process of painting this forest dryad. So I actually worked on this one during a stream over a couple sessions, and unfortunately the first little part of the me doing the sketch and the lighting got lost. So I will just show like a little screenshot of what the starting stages looked like. But what I want to kind of talk about in this tutorial is basically just my general process and my approach. I've been getting a lot more freelance gigs recently, and for me, having a very typical way I go about things has been extremely helpful, because it has allowed me to kind of have like an order of operations for every single thing I do. And it just makes, the whole creative process go a little bit more smoothly. So as you guys can see, I generally start with a pretty loose line drawing, especially for a piece like this that was more of a personal piece. I didn't have any strict client prompt to deal with or strict deadline, so I was kind of just letting a little bit more loose. But I knew with this character that I wanted to have some really dynamic lighting, and I wanted to do this to push myself because I'm not really the best at plotting cast shadows, so I thought it would be a fun experiment for me. So going into this, knowing that this was already going to be a challenge for me, I was thinking about ways that I can make this easier for myself. So what I started with was, I'll put a little clip of my scene as well, but I actually posed a model in Daz 3D, which is a free application. I've done another tutorial video on how to approach this sort of process, but it's been extremely helpful for me to like set up my own lighting scheme and really know where my camera is in perspective in relation to the character, and really understand like how the lighting is working the way it does. So it's kind of cool. I set up these like rectangular polygons as these parts of the log essentially that would be casting that shadow, so that I could at least kind of guess on how the lighting was peering through those cracks and sort of laying on her body. So that was definitely a huge help for me, and definitely sped up the process quite a lot, just because it took a lot of the guesswork out of it, right? Here at Art Bros, we're always a huge advocate for references, and I think either 3D reference or taking your own photo references is like, it's crucial. It's just crucial to making a realistic painting, and it's really going to help you guys, push your work. So after I set up my sketch, my basic lighting, and my 3D model, what I typically like to do is do kind of like an underpainting so that I can understand my color palette and just generally how I'm working on lighting with everything. So I will work that up to a point where I'm understanding what's going on with the painting, and once I feel good about that, then I'll start to paint opaquely over top of my lines and start knocking out those lines. And for me, this process is helpful because, again, it's like a step-by-step sort of thing, and you kind of get to these huge milestones, and then you're like, all right, that milestone is done, I'll move on to the next one. And it kind of just helps keep you a little bit more organized. The other thing I want to mention too, in terms of organization, is just ensuring that you are organizing your layers properly. Especially for a piece like this that's got a very clear foreground, midground, background, and even like far background, it's very helpful to separate those things so that you are rendering, very cleanly, and you're not really mixing things up. It just kind of helps, keep your piece a little bit more organized and a little bit easier to manage. I'm not one of those people that, is super anal and, separates my layers for every single element. I like to keep it to a minimum, and occasionally I'll even just paint on one layer if I'm feeling if I'm feeling dangerous, right? But I do, if I know it's going to help me out in the long run, I will separate the big elements just so that I'm not having to paint over stuff a whole bunch of times. From the start, I also had this little like companion character in mind that I started to work on, and you'll notice after a while I ended up painting it out. I felt like it wasn't really adding to the piece, and the two characters weren't feeling super connected. So for me, that was just a lesson learned of like, okay, if I'm gonna have multiple characters in a piece, I should be thinking ahead of what those characters are doing for each other or how they can connect in some way to make the piece better. It got to the point where it was like, what is even the point? So I just removed it. You'll also notice around the 50% point, I have this reference to the right side of my piece. And that was actually a paint over that a friend of mine did, Dennis. And I was getting to this point where I was pretty confident with my piece, but I knew it could just be pushed further. I was looking at it for so long and my eyes were getting tired, and I just felt like having a second set of eyes, especially somebody that I trust and know gives good advice. I just thought that would be a good point to do that. So he gave me some really good feedback, and I did implement some of that stuff into my final polished piece. But it's just a lesson for pretty much all artists out there that, you know, if you're really struggling with a piece, or even if you're not, you know, sometimes it's good to just get a second opinion on it, and just, you know, somebody might see something that you're just totally missing, and they could give you some sort of advice or a nudge in the right direction that might totally change your piece for the better. All right, I wanted to recommend just a few tips to ensure that your piece is going to be as good as it could possibly be, and just kind of, again, help with the headache of guesswork as you continue through your process. So the first thing, as I mentioned, is just organizing your layers. Just make sure that things are separated as best they can be without overwhelming yourself, just so that if you have to take a step back and backtrack, or if you feel yourself kind of like muddying your paint, it's a good way to just like have things separated and clean. The next thing is flipping your canvas. So this might seem like a weird one, especially to newer artists, but trust me, if you set up a hotkey for flipping your canvas and you can just do it whenever you want, it's going to change your life. Because a lot of times we see things, and because again we've been looking at them for so long, they look right to us, right? But when you flip it, it might look totally off, and you'll immediately identify like what those things that are off as soon as you flip your canvas. So just trust me on this, try it out for yourself, and you'll see how much it will change your overall construction drawings. So the last thing I'm going to recommend as soon as you open up your document is making a black and white layer and putting it at the top of your layer hierarchy. What that's really going to help with is understanding your values as quickly as possible. A lot of times colors can be deceiving, especially very saturated colors can appear like they are very bright in value, when in reality, you know, anything going more towards white is obviously going to be the brightest on the value scale. So this was very helpful for me with this piece, because the lighting scenario is a little bit more muted. It's a little bit more of an ambient lighting situation, even though I do have these streams of light coming in. I was really looking for a way to make the figure stand out from that interior of the log, and being able to check my values as often as I wanted really helped me out, and ensured that my character was standing out first and foremost, which is obviously the most important part of this piece. All right, so the last thing I wanted to discuss, I get this question all the time, and this is a really hard one to answer, but people always ask, like, when is a piece done? And especially with this one, I think I was struggling for quite a while to be like, all right, when am I finished with this piece? To me, a piece is finished when you can zoom around, when you can zoom in the painting and kind of pan around the image, and every single element of your piece feels like it's finished, right? It's in the right place. That doesn't necessarily mean that every single element or every single square inch of your piece needs to be rendered, because that can obviously lead to like this over rendering issue where there's no clear focal point. But to me, it means like, okay, the character herself is the most important thing. She needs to be very crisp, but her face is the focal point, right? So the face, the bust, and then maybe the abdomen should be the most rendered out, and then everything else from there can sort of fade off and be a little bit looser, a little bit more painterly, especially the kind of style I was going for. I wanted to mimic more oil painty kind of look. So in terms of that, I made sure that once I zoomed around the image, everything was up to my liking and I could feel confident that, you know, it was done. When you get to those final stages as well, you might want to consider some effects like, I don't know, magical effects or atmosphere and stuff like that. This character's in like a magical forest, so I kind of added some of that magical smoke and little gold floating things around just to kind of polish it up, make it a little bit more exciting, so it's not just like characters standing on background. And you'll also notice, like, doing those little final touches, maybe some color edits if you're feeling like some color is off. Those final touches really push your piece to the next level, and it's definitely worth sitting there and kind of fiddling around just a little bit, just so that you can kind of put that piece to bed and be like, all right, I'm very proud of this, I'm happy with everything, and I'm ready to move on to the next one. Alright guys, and that just about wraps it up. I hope you guys enjoyed this little tutorial. I hope you learned something. If you didn't know, we have a relatively large artist Discord. The link is down in the description below, where we've got thousands of other artists that are all sharing work and doing really cool stuff. We stream once a week on twitch.tv/artbros, where we discuss a fun art topic each week. And also, if you didn't know, you can head over to nickhagialisart.com/artquest, where I have a course called ArtQuest, the Art Improvement RPG, which is an art improvement and portfolio building course. It's a fun little adventure to go on. So yeah, you guys can check all that out in the description. If you have any other questions about my process or anything, feel free to write down in the comments below. I'll be sure to respond to you guys. So thanks again, and keep on drawing, everyone. See you guys.